everybody. Welcome to another edition of Casey Turner Presents Talk to Me. This one is extra special because we've got my good friend, Mr. Glen Phillips of Toad the Wet Sprocket here, reporting from Santa Barbara, California. I assume that's where you're at right now, right, Glen? Yes, hunkered down. Thank you guys all so much for being here. If you're just joining us, welcome, and please, well, you should be just joining us because we just started, so I don't know why I just said that. Comment below where you're tuning in from. Comment if you've seen Glen or Toad play before, where you saw them, some of your favorite memories of those times, and also please share this, start a watch party, whatever that means, and help us get as many people watching this. But without further ado, welcome Glen Phillips. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Every time I see you, I just smile. I like being around you. You make me feel just good. I always feel like I'm seeing like an old friend when I see you.
Well, you are. We've had some good times.
We have had some good times. For those of you that don't know, so I'm a concert promoter in San Francisco, and I've had the honor of having Glen play several of my intimate stages over the years, and got to meet you back in a very intimate setting back in around 2007, I think it was. A good friend of mine, Drew Pierce, was hosting a house concert series, which he's the one that inspired me really to kind of fall into what I do now. And Glen Phillips was playing. And that was a tour that you had broken a guitar and you needed a guitar to play. And I had mine in the car and you played my guitar in the whole show. And I was like,
yeah. It was so my my Lakewood got smashed on the way to. I remember that.
Yeah,
that was a fun one. And then we went to Ireland together years later. We've traveled the world.
Yes. In 2015, you had mentioned on socials that you were heading to Europe, and you mentioned Ireland, and I was like, I've got to hook him up with my friend Julian Muller, and we got to put together something so we can get some shows. And then as I was helping put that together with Julian, I was like, can I come?
It all worked out.
And that was great. And then another really kind of fond memory when we first started working together was the very first time I got to host Glen and anything. It was a backyard house concert in August of 2012. And the cops came, which was awesome, and attempted to shut us down. And if you were there at that show, I get people all the time will say, oh, my God, I was at that show where the cops came. And anyways, but I want to talk about you. I want to, hopefully share some things with people, maybe some stories they don't know. But I want to start kind of with you. And, you grew up in Santa Barbara, maybe talking about where you grew up, your family, and how that interweaved and where music first came into your world.
How did it all go? I grew up in Santa Barbara. My dad was a physics teacher at UCSB, and my mom, chemist by degree, and then was involved in local politics. And so, I don't know, just and they were good nerds. So, the kind of thing where they'd be up in bed reading the Dune trilogy, rereading the Dune trilogy together, or like Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein. So heavy on the sci-fi. The family would watch Star Trek together. That was like our evening family hangout. Yeah, my brother was the musician. My brother played drums and keyboards, and I wanted to be like him, so I started playing guitar and had a band my freshman year of high school, and that was Toad. And so that ended up being the next, 35 years of my life or something. So it wasn't what my first ambition was. I need to be an artist of some kind. But I also have always felt just kind of shy, and like I was always a little afraid of being overused and vulnerable in that way. So kind of thought I would teach or something, like stay in the arts, but not have to do the performer selling yourself thing. Somehow find anyway. And yeah, so it's been a trip. Got 3 kids. They're all grown up, 18, 23, 24. Freya, Zola, Sophia. And yeah, just life is strange, but it's not bad.
And that's the interview, guys. Thanks for being here, Glen.
My bio. That's the origin story.
Well, how old were you
I
when?
was being cross-brained with a radioactive canister when I was 12. While it gave me certain cognitive abilities, it also created a propensity towards depression and anxiety.
Um, I'll-
Origin story.
oh, um,
Daredevil
so
without the fun parts.
I'm gonna pause this for just for 1 second. I'm one.
So
Okay,
I
if you notice your screen
garage,
switch,
and now, yeah. No, you explain. Go ahead.
no, no, we're in the garage now, or we're in Glenn's garage. The internet's better in there, and now we can actually continue on and hear what he has to say because that's why we're all here anyway.
Yeah.
So just to jump right into it, so because I know your time is valuable and you got a lot going on today, we were talking about your family and growing up in Santa Barbara, and you first got into music because your brother played drums, and you found your way to the guitar. How old were you when you picked up a guitar and started? Did you start taking lessons? Did you learn by ear?
I got fired by a couple of years. I wasn't really good at studying. I just wanted to write songs. So I could never learn my skills or anything else. I would like learn enough to write another song and then I'd do that. Um, so had a bit of schooling, and actually did 2 years in a city college, like music theory and never put it, I guess, I mean, put it to use and it expanded my vocabulary, but I'm not like, oh, that's a Picardy third, that Neapolitan second. Like, I'm not, uh, I don't think, if that makes sense, but I think it opened my palette.
So you're the kind of player that needed to kind of apply what you're doing almost immediately, or it wasn't fun for you.
Yeah, I guess. I figured I wasn't going to be much of a shredder. I knew I was a very good guitarist. I'm left-handed and I played right-handed and I had like no dexterity and no discipline. And I noticed pretty early the really good guitarists were the ones who both worked harder and had more innate ability. So having neither, I concentrated on the song part because that's the part I like the most.
So that was around the age what 15, 16, or
No, that would have been like 10, 11.
okay. So
Yeah,
so this is like you got into playing guitar
12.
prior to high school, and then yeah.
Yeah, I guess more like 11, 12. Like I remember fifth grade, sixth grade. I didn't work at it very well at that time. I think I was writing songs in seventh and eighth grade. Um, none that anyone will ever hear, but kind of that was when I kind of started. Band started in ninth grade, so
Did you and your brother ever play together at home?
not much. He was at home before he left for college. I couldn't play at all, and he was kind of he's brilliant. He was kind of more the wonder kid, and I had a guitar, and I was more into metal. I was really into Iron Maiden, Ozzy. We were both into Rush, but he was the keyboard player, and his heroes were Peter Gabriel, Thomas Dolby, Depeche Mode. Anything Trevor Horn produced back in the day. So he was like 80s, 90s synth pop, like 80s synth pop, like just deep in it. And so different world, and metal world as well. So at that time, we never made music together.
Do you still put on the occasional metal record and rock out on your long drives before you get to a town?
Some of the stuff holds up better than some of the stuff. I did bring out like I think Blizzard of Oz, Randy Rhoads era Ozzy, pretty great.
Yes.
I did a little going back to Rush after Neil Peart passed away, uh, but yeah, I don't go back to it all that often. I'm due for another trip down Iron Maiden lane. Only because, like, girlfriend, my favorite pajama shirt of hers, it's like the softest shirt on the earth, is this old Iron Maiden tour thing. The one with like the fist going through his head. It's the softest T-shirt in the world. So I got to re-up on my Iron Maiden.
Did you ever listen to Metallica?
You know, the Black Album, I was late on Metallica, but it was never really my thing. When I was into metal, it was kind of more hair metal. So, it was like, just give it time. It was Rat and I get Riot. Ozzy was my big one. Randy Rhoads was totally my hero, and I was massively Rush for a long time, and yeah. I don't know. No, I don't go back and listen to those records that much. A lot of them I'm like, wow, it sounds kind of small. I mean, it's cool. The guitar playing is usually amazing, but yeah.
So prior to picking up a guitar, you were already kind of writing. Were you keeping a journal, and was that your first exercises into songwriting? Or?
I wasn't journaling. What I specialized in was incomplete first chapters of science fiction novels. I would have broken down dystopias like futures where everyone lived underground and most people died due to some super disease. Like literally, that was my thing as a kid, dystopian sci-fi. And so I would have an idea for a world. I wouldn't have a plot. I would start trying to write. We're all kind of rip-offs of like, Boy and His Dog by Harlan Ellison.
I know of it, but I've never.
It's kind of there's a funny movie if you ever watch it, but it's my early writing stuff was less like here are my feelings, here is my lovely poetry, and was more like awful dystopian, incomplete sci-fi.
So it sounds like your family, from your parents to your brother, had a really big impact on who you are and. You really kind of absorbed a lot of those worlds from the sci-fi, really smart parents and your musical brother. It's pretty cool.
My brother got me into a lot of great music. And I think with my parents, more than anything, it was a matter of curiosity. Like my dad is he was the curious person I've ever known. Like he's just constantly reading, constantly learning, educating himself, and he liked being in awe, and he, the good thing of being like with physics, it's not thinking you know the answer. It's every question you ask, even if you think you temporarily know what it might mean, it's just a gateway to more interesting questions. You're never there, you're never complete. You're always asking. And I remember there was some physicist, like at the turn of the century, was asked like, "What is greatest disappointment? Like greatest disappointment in physics was?" And he said, "Well, most of our theories are still holding." And that was the great disappointment, was that everything they thought they knew was still kind of true. We don't know enough yet to know that everything we know is wrong. And the most exciting possible thing to this guy, it's like the opposite of a Trump follower, right? It's this desire to I want to have my mind blown. I want to find out. I want to be able to start to perceive something I'd never perceived. And I love that idea of constant fascination. Not that you're supposed to batten down the hatches, declare what's right and what's wrong, and defend your position till your last drop of blood. It's so that curiosity and that questioning, I think, is the main thing I got. And that our dinner time conversations, basically we talked about politics and religion every night. Like the stuff you're not supposed to talk about was all we ever talked about. And kind of my mom's family, as I'm not sure she got it from her family, but there's an element about them. I think that argumentation was the way to show you were paying attention. Like if someone's talking, not a personal insult, nothing ever like that. But if somebody is saying the sky is blue, you might say, well, it's a shade of blue. But in fact, it's like, it's like, I love you, therefore I will challenge you. So it was a good family. I'm using all the words tonight.
I like that you said that your father is one of the most curious people you've known, because to me, you're one of the most curious people I know. I feel like you're that person. You kind of, to me, you just described yourself in a lot of ways. Every time I talk to you, you've got, if you heard this podcast, if you read this, you're off doing this, you're going to go try this. I feel like you're always chasing down these answers, and it's really cool. And I feel like you share that in your songwriting a lot of times too. And at least you definitely share it in your onstage banter. I always feel like when I see a Glen Phillips show, I just got to go on your travels with you or hear really what you're up to, and I think your audience really appreciates that. I appreciate it.
Thanks. I mean, I think the thing, I mean, sometimes the songs are pedantic, but like usually, even if there's a conclusion, I feel like it's my higher self trying to give my current self some advice on how to take the high road. But there's a lot of open-ended questions in the songs. I mean, and it's, yeah, once again, I don't know if answers are what we need. I think we just need better and better questions.
I think that's a good little slap down on that chapter. Can you give us a song?
No.
No.
Yeah. What song do you want?
I think you should play whatever you feel. Maybe something from the earlier days, or I don't know, or something new you're working on, or whatever you want to play.
Iron
Maiden.
Awesome. I wouldn't do it justice. I'm gonna do. This is Toad's working on a new record, and I'm just getting mixes sent to me today for this song. So. Wasted years. Wait. Oh, I started in the wrong key. Good thing this isn't live. Sorry, there's a key change on the... I started on the second half. Wasted years. Waste another instant. I fed my fears. Things that haven't been yet. Hope don't sit there. Just waiting for the changes. It's fighting for the lost cause. It's getting in the trenches. Starting now. Starting now. All I own, borrowed from my children. I'll leave this world more bright than when it came in. So start
That's a great one.
Thank you.
If you're just joining us, this is Glen Phillips of Toad the Wet Sprocket, and just played a new song that's going to be coming out on a Toad album, it sounds like, in the near future. What was that one called again? Starting Now?
Starting Now.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that was really great. Thank you for sharing that one with us.
Thank you.
Also, if you're just joining, comment below if you've seen Toad or Glen before. Let us know where you've seen them live at. Share your thoughts below, and be sure to share this video. And also below, there's going to be a link to Glen's website where you can buy his records. And there's also a little tip jar down there if you want to support this podcast in any way. Because at the moment, I ain't doing nothing.
There you go. And my live cast tonight is directly after this, so we got to make sure we keep it under an hour.
Yes, 100%.
So I can make my live cast.
I need it. Yes, 100%. Okay, so we've got the Santa Barbara thing. So you went. So in 1986, that's when Toad the Wet Sprocket officially formed. Yes, no, that's about right-ish.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I was. Yeah, 86 probably. I'm assuming that's when we started playing. Todd and I had a few incarnations, so we were in theater and choir together. And I would often, he had a station wagon that I could throw my bike into, and it lived about 2 blocks away from me. So I, being lazy, liked to, whenever possible, throw my bike in the back of his car and get a ride home instead of biking home. And then I found out he played guitar, and he could play like the riff from More Than a Feeling, and he could play the solo from Stairway to Heaven, and I thought that was pretty cool. And and he like all these, REM, Elvis Costello, Dinosaur Jr., Husker Du, Replacements. He got me into all of that stuff. I was definitely much more into Rush at the time, and started listening to all this indie and post music after I met him, and started writing together, and went through a couple incarnations. Spent a long time looking for a lead singer who was older, and I started on the bass guitar. Dean was originally playing keyboards, and he had like a nice Kramer with a whammy bar. He played keyboards and guitar. So anyway, a few different incarnations.
That's pretty cool. I did know that you did. I knew you played bass guitar, but I didn't realize that you weren't the original thought out to be the lead singer. You stepped into that role after the fact.
I was writing all the lyrics, and so I was, and Todd didn't really want to sing. I think they liked the words and they liked the melodies, but I was a pretty big nerd, and so they wanted someone cool in front, and we tried a few people out, and at some point I was just ended up being de facto singer, but it took a while to get there. We were definitely looking for a replacement, and I was the temporary for a while. So
So before you guys put out your debut record in '89, Bread and Circus, were you just playing live all the time? Did you have like a demo you made? What was your way? What was it like in the mid to late '80s, playing in Santa Barbara of all places? I mean, I'm from the Midwest, so California dreams. That's where they happen. But playing live in that time, I know it happened really fast for you all. Did you get to play a lot of gigs to cut your teeth before you got noticed, or?
Well, we played. It happened all kind of weird. I mean, part of it was the place close to us. There was this place called Pat's Grass Shack in Goleta, and the guy who ran it thought that ASCAP and BMI were pirates trying to destroy his business. Like, they came in one day and it's like, hey, if you have music here, you have to pay us for the songs they're playing. And he basically said, like, and decided to be an originals-only venue. And so you had to only play a material, would pull the plug on you if you played Happy Birthday. And I mean, he was vigilant about it. So that when the band wasn't playing, he didn't play the radio either, right? Wouldn't pay ASCAP and BMI anything. For those of you in the audience, those songs ostensibly get paid. Now, we're supposed to get paid through those things through. I made $25 from Spotify and Apple Music last month. Boy, street benefiting us all. Anyway, I know people who are just freeing their Spotify. It's like 3-cent checks. It cost more to send the check than you made. Spotify checks. And, yeah, he was just super cheap. And so we would play, and there were all these other bands there. We just ended up making a lot of friends. And so there was this original music scene around this club, and the guy who ran it, he didn't care about original music. He just was cheap. Like, it was kind of awesome in that way, that he wasn't like, no, man, I'm really like, showing up. I just love the local art and I want to do. He just didn't care. He was just cheap as he could be. So I just keep playing. So, so we got to interact with all these other bands who were also doing original music. And if we didn't have a new song the next week, it was like, well, we'd been slacking. So we became prolific really early. And then, I mean, we'd done a couple of things on 4-tracks, like old cassette 4-tracks. But the first recording we ever did was Brad Knack, who ended up kind of being our manager or co-manager with Chris Blake. He had a project and he needed a backup band and he'd play, and he was like, hey, you guys, could you back me up 2 songs and then I'll pay for you to record 2 of your own. And so we did that. We recorded his, then we recorded ours, and we're like, hey, if we do 8 more of these, we'll have a record. And so we spent like $600 and we did 8 more, and that was Bread and Circus. So, and I would have been 16 at the time, So, I mean, it was nationally in 89. Yeah. So it would have been 87, I think, that we actually recorded it. And then 88 to 89 for it's all somewhere in that range.
And then the same year you put out Pale, so it was kind of like a back-to-back.
Yeah, Pale was already finished. So we'd recorded these 2 records, and we had a punk rock attitude, like, well, if you're going to sign us, man, you got to put out our records as is. And all the record companies are like, we should really do a professional record first. We're like, no, man, put out the first 2 as is. And Columbia said yes. So
you're a kid still going to high school, signing record deals. I mean, I assume
I got out of high school. I got out of high school at 16. Yeah. So I figured out I did a little bit of summer school, challenged an economics class, and then transferred credits. So I managed to basically skip my senior year at the high school just because
the guys in tow were older, right? They'd already graduated, or you were the younger
Yeah,
one?
they were older, and my brother was in college. Just high school seemed kind of like a holding tank. And City College in Santa Barbara is great. And I figured out how I could go there, and so still graduated with my class. But I went to college. I went to the City College when I was 16. So got a couple of years of that in before we left. I left with bad grades. We got signed literally during Dead Week. We had all our finals at City College, and Randy and Dean were at CSB, and we flew out to New York during Dead Week, signed our contract. We're like, yeah, we didn't study at all. So I got a bunch of C's, ending my college career on a strong down note.
So your life is changing. You're in this band that's getting noticed right away, and then fast forward a little bit on the timeline, when the album Fear comes out in '91. That's probably the landing mark where the entire band, all your lives change, right? Because now you've got something that's being heard nationally, that's getting attention. I assume.
Yeah.
Prior to that,
no, it was fascinating and surprising, is probably the best way to say. I mean, yeah, it was a really weird time. I mean, we'd been touring a lot before we came out with the so, and it's part of why we wanted to put out the first two albums as is. It's like we were a college band. We wanted to tour the colleges. We wanted to go out and event. You know, we weren't trying to have a big. And I think we all kind of thought get dropped, you know, fairly quickly. So we were surprised. We put out the first two. We got to make another one that eventually had it. Like, I wasn't expecting that that would be my life. So there was a lot of imposter syndrome. It just always felt outside of me. You know, I didn't go to LA a lot. I kind of didn't feel comfortable in all those circles. So, you know, I would know that this thing was happening, that, you know, more people and all that, but my life was constant. You know, I'd met Laurel, my now former wife, you know, I was 18, together for 25 years total, and, you know, I had my friends. I would come home and it was her and it was my friends from town, and it wasn't, I never did the LA thing, which I now regret a little bit. I don't regret the life I gave my kids. I regret the opportunity cost in getting to do different kinds of work, and just being around people who are creatives. But it's a pretty good life.
It's interesting, like talking about regrets and decisions you may have made at age like 18, 19 years old. I mean, I picture like what I was like at that age, and like just the thought of even trying to navigate a real life without the help from my parents or whatever almost doesn't even seem possible. So I mean, I'm thinking like, because you guys are all kids at this time. I mean, in our perspective, right? 19.
Yeah, no,
19,
my career peaked. I mean, that's weird. It's like going, oh, like my 24-year-old is now the age that I was when my career was on the downturn. She's already past my peak. That's crazy. Yeah.
But really, I mean, being kids, I mean, how did you guys navigate this professional career? And I mean, there's major decisions that do need to be made as a group, as a collective. Who's going to be managing the project? People you're picking to help trust you through this kind of world. How do you do that as a kid?
We were lucky to have a good team. We were lucky to have really good product managers. We were lucky to have an era where record companies had patience and money to put into artist development. So, I mean, we did small licensing deals. We never did like advance for up until Coil. We never had an advance that was anything other than strict recording costs. We're like, we want to earn money. So we were cheap for the record company because we weren't taking these huge advances. And sorry, I just got a message that there's a fake Twitter account. Don't
We're gonna go
subscribe to the fake Twitter.
Let's hunt them down.
It's got it better than my Twitter. I never ever post there. So I'm the worst at Twitter. Just social media. It's not. I like other things. In any event, where were we?
We were just talking about the navigation of some of the decisions you have to make as a band, and
yeah, kids. So I think we benefited from some decisions in terms of patience, and we had a really strong work ethic and had good friends at home. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, I go home, you know, play a show, and I would just write tear-stained letters home about how much I missed my girlfriend. And when we started touring, I couldn't even get into the bars. You know, I would have to just sit in the van and wait for our time and go in when it was time to play and then walk out of the club again because I wasn't 21, you know? So I didn't get in a lot of trouble. I didn't do a lot of crazy shit. And when I would get invited to like, oh, such and such famous musician wants to write with you at his manor outside of London, I'd be like, no. Like, I couldn't do it. Like, I just didn't feel like I was in that world. So my regrets are more like taking it for, not realizing how incredibly special, short-lived that experience would be. So I'm lucky. I don't have regrets of like, I don't know, losing 3 years to cocaine. I lost a decade to depression instead. But my regrets, my stories of the rock and roll life are mostly of like running scared from it because it was too weird. So, but yeah, I was a kid.
Yeah. You still are, mate. I think it's a good transition. Can you give us another song?
Yeah. Let's do Old Familiar Toad.
Whatever you would like.
Okay. We spotted the ocean, the head of the trail. Where are we going? So far away. Somebody told me this is this, where everything's better and everything's safe. Walk on the ocean, step in the store, fresh becomes water. Half an hour later, we packed up our things, said we'd send letters, and all those little things. They knew we were lying, smiled just the same. Seemed that already we care. Walk on the ocean, step on the storm, flesh becomes water, war becomes war. Walk on the ocean, step on the storm, flesh becomes water, war becomes war. Back at the homestead, where the air makes you choke, and people don't know you, trust is a joke. Don't even have pictures, just memories to hold. It grows sweeter each season as we slowly grow.
That's my guest, Glen Phillips of Toad the Wet Sprocket. If you're just joining us, thanks for being here. I'm Casey Turner. This is my new live podcast thingy or whatever it's called, Talk to Me. And I just am basically calling up all my music friends and talking with them for like an hour or so and listening to play songs. And it's keeping me sane. So,
Good. Where are we for time, out of curiosity?
we got a little...
Just wanted to make sure.
I think we're at like... I'm not exactly 100% sure, but I think we're around 45. So we are kind of closing in on our final section here. I got a couple more things I want to talk about, and then I got some fan questions, and then we'll close out with one last song, if that's okay with you. And
Sure.
thank you guys again all for being here and commenting below and buying Glen's records and tipping, all that good stuff. And definitely tune into his Facebook page, Glen Phillips, so you can see him doing more live streams, because he's been doing a lot of them. And you've been raising a lot of money for nonprofits. That's the one thing I've noticed about yours. You've been doing a great job at picking up all these different nonprofits and building awareness and sending some money to them. What gave you that inspiration to do that? That's great.
It just seemed like the thing to do, and I saw this nice donate button that you could add to your live stream. Made it really easy. So, yeah, when it started, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was originally doing 5 live streams a week, and now I'm doing 3, plus I'm doing a stage it. And I figured I would have the stage it on the weekend for me, and then I think there were still questions about how long things would be shut down then. Um, and But yeah, it just seemed like a good way, like if people's eyes were on the screen, have a little tip jar for charity there, and there's so many people doing good work. So
That's really sweet and very consistent with you because you're such a caring person, and I feel like you're always giving. And I don't know, when I saw you doing that, it didn't surprise me that you're raising money for people, and it's really
yeah.
a good
Well, I eventually
opportunity.
put my own PayPal out. That's at some point somebody was like, "Hey, Glenn, you're not working this year, are you?" It's like, "Oh shit, I gotta
Yeah,
earn." So I put
yeah,
my own PayPal up there too, finally. But hey, and it's an easy. I mean, it's interesting with Stage It or anything these days. I mean, I think those who, some businesses are doing great. It's a really interesting seeing how uneven it can be. Right, we have somewhere between 14 and 30% actual unemployment. That's our plumbing. I mean, so unemployment is like super high. Like some businesses have just been eviscerated, and some businesses are killing it. And so it's, I think for those who have a salary, for those who are doing well, for those who are in that up, I mean, I think that they're feeling really grateful and they're taking care of other people and putting it out when they can, whether it's to, food kitchens. That's the thing, is knowing, man, the privilege of just being okay, like having enough right now is amazing. And there's so many people who, standing in lines for every meal. So I think it says a lot about our culture that, schools so easily, like we realize one of their primary functions already has been feeding all the kids whose families can't afford to feed them because our economy is so, you know, and, I think COVID is going to hopefully bring into the light a lot of about how we value what we value, and if ultimately is the tax cut to the super wealthy worth the fact that the poorest, working a full-time job have enough to have a family, feed their kids, that our schools should be busy educating our children, not like just making sure they have enough food that they don't die. Like that's. Yeah. Anyway,
Amen.
uh,
Amen. I'm going to
stuff
jump
like
back
that.
on this timeline a little bit here, and because I want to talk about your solo career, which is I'm what's interesting for me as a fan of yours. So for whatever reason, in my hometown or in my radio playlist, Toad didn't enter my life until way later on, and I discovered your solo career, and I worked my way backwards, which is really cool.
Hmm.
Because I'm a huge fan
I
of
like.
yeah, yeah, and so but I want to talk about so we got the '90s. You basically spent all your '20s touring in Toad. Very different than most kids in their '20s. Different lifestyle. And then somewhere along the lines of 1998, Toad the Wet Sprocket calls it quits.
Mhm.
What brought you all to that decision? What happened?
I would say like just watch like what's the VH1 behind the music? Just watch like 5 episodes and mash them together, and it's us. You know, whatever the stories, the personalities, the disagreements, the uh, you know brick walls where nobody can communicate anymore, and everybody's aggrieved. I think we just got there, like a lot of bands do. But after a while, we got past some of it. So
Yeah. So when that happened, you didn't stop writing. You didn't stop playing. There is a little bit of a gap from when you put out your debut solo record. But did you continue on playing solo after that, or did you take a break altogether from music?
I was started playing right away. I couldn't get a record deal. I was unsignable, and I got really bitter and pissed off, and was kind of waiting to be picked up and taken somewhere. I mean, even the label, like Sony said they were going to pick me up solo, and they had 80 days to decide. We told everybody, nope, we're staying with Sony, and then they dropped me on day 82, I believe it was, and told me to go fuck myself, essentially. Thank you, Donnie Einer. Anyway, and so I think it was punitive, but just like gap of time and like, yeah, I'm gonna go this way, and then having to start. And I took it all personal, and it's. I'm really depressed. I mean, it's weird. You take stuff for granted, right? And you get a world, and you have success easily as a kid. I think it's really easy not to understand how precious and hard won that is, how incredibly lucky it is to have anyone wanting to hear or support your music. And so I waited to get a record deal. I realized I wasn't going to get a record deal. I'd been playing at Largo in L.A. With a bunch of other, terrible songwriters. Couldn't get a record deal, like Glen Phillips and all these just horrible. I mean, it was really weird. It was like the most amazing art. It was Amy Mann when she couldn't get a record deal. It was all these. Ben Folds described it at one point. It's like, yeah, the labels, they really scrubbed for talent, didn't they? Like, there were all these amazing songwriters there, all of whom were kind of wondering what to do as the major label, as we aged out being the young cool bands of the early 90s. And I made a record with Ethan Johns just independently, and then Largo really saved my life and gave me this artistic community that I felt a part of, that I could just go down there and see a show, blow my mind and inspire me. Like, that feeling of like, wow, I gotta kill myself or work harder, shit like that. That are just like, time to get the game up. And so Largo totally inspired me, and around that time, I also met the guys in Nickel Creek, and so, but I made that record independently because I couldn't get a record deal, and eventually, Brick Red Records, who switched in almost immediately into 5.1 Group and then went out of business, released the record. I had like a series of like labels that died immediately before or after the record was going to come. Like, it's been like, I don't know how much of it is self-sabotage and how much just been, I think, karmically, I'm just supposed to have a very modest career from here on out. And so, it's like every time I put out a record, it's been on a label, it's like something is just like, oh, whoops, the guy who signed you here just quit a week before your record came out. No one's really working the project anymore. It's just like there's always been something. So, oh well.
I mean, a lot of my favorite songwriters, whether they've had breaks at some point in their career or not, I still feel like end up being the most underappreciated in so many ways. But at the same time, are highly appreciated in front of a lot of people. It's just all relative, right?
It's totally relative. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like I compare my career to my old career, and I bitch and moan about it. How many powers of 10 less my audience is. But it's a great problem to have. And I know so many people who can write circles around no one's ever heard. And I know people, and people are really grateful for where they are. I mean, like Matt the electrician, I always love, he talks about how there are all these, kids in Austin who are like, yeah, man, the music business is so hard. And his response is always like, have you ever like done roofing in Texas in the summer? Because that's hard. Writing songs, easy. Writing songs is really shooting fish in a barrel. Great job. You should try it. I remember him when I think of that. And frankly, just people, him, Natalia, like so many of mine who just blow my mind and aren't household names, haven't been on the radio, and they just work and they tour and they're grateful and they're awesome and they, so, but you were asking for the bios, I was giving you the record
No,
part.
that was great. That was perfect. And I mean,
It does
that,
always sound like ingratitude to me, though, if I step back like one step from it.
well, I
So
think you answered that perfectly because it's kind of a segue into thinking of the world of like, did going into your solo career feel like starting over? And it sounds like it did a little bit.
it definitely
With a leg
did,
up. With a leg
and
up.
yeah, it felt it. It is in fact a leg up. At the time, I had moved down, being a platinum band on Columbia Records, and all of a sudden, I couldn't get a manager. I couldn't get a record deal. I took it very personally and went really dark. So now I kind of see it as, yeah, it's such a great leg up. I've been able to make so many mistakes that musicians would not have survived. Like, I'm really lucky. And once again, the life I like seems to be one where I have more freedom, I have more agility, and I don't, even having a record company, I'm on Compass Records right now, and I keep going, like, every week passes by, and it's like, oh, I wanted to ask them if I could put out a single. Like, I forget that I have help, and I forget that there's people there who want to assist me and who are actually contractually supposed to help me with what I'm doing. And like, I can go, hey, I got a couple songs for a single. Can we put this out? And then it might actually happen. And I don't even call them. It's really weird. But there's part of me that likes being a hermit and likes kind of being outside the mainstream. And I kind of want to be, noticed enough that I can make a living. But it's an odd game because when you start getting into the music business again, you start believing its metrics, meaning you start believing that it's like, oh, well, I'm supposed to get a good review here. I'm supposed to be liked by this NPR personality tastemaker. And so every time I release an album, I'm looking for those markers of success. And I don't get them anymore. And then I feel terrible about the record, and like I have to peel myself off the floor to try another one. And so it's odd to play the game just enough, bother making a record and putting it out and getting some help, but not so much that I know that I also feel like I have to, if I release a record, just not care at all about how much it sells, or anyone wrote a good review or anything. And I think that's part of why Toad worked at the beginning, to go back around to the early history. I never thought we would even get signed. We never thought we'd get signed. It was told, that story for another time. But so the idea that we'd have any success on top of that was just laughable. I didn't give a shit. And I didn't give a shit, and I had Columbia Records behind me. And that was a powerful combination. And when you kind of don't give a shit, but you really want more people to notice, and you don't have anyone behind, that's a weirder situation to be in. Anyway.
Well, now you've got a lot of fans behind you that have been along the way for a long time, and
that's
pretty cool.
That's the thing, is like the audience I have now is a lot smaller, but really willing to follow me through any question I want to ask, and really willing to. I have 20 minutes left on the phone, apparently, or 20% left on the phone.
That's why I blinked. Okay, cool. We can get through this. We got this.
But my audience now, they are so incredibly and through this COVID thing, it's like it's been amazing how much people have shown up, both just emotionally, time, willingness, but even monetarily, how willing people have been to support me. And it's pretty incredible. And I look at, people from the era we were in, and, radio play and whatever, album sales, I have a pretty amazing like he thinks this, but I know this to be certain. I'm really lucky to have my audience because, you know, as much as people get happy when they hear an old Toad single, they go utterly silent and pay total attention when I play a brand new song they've never heard. Like it's pretty great.
And I think also part of that through the songs and also your live performance, you do share a lot with people through your journey.
It's called oversharing.
But I think your fans really do feel like they're part of your journey and you let them in. And that's something that's very special that a lot of people don't do. And I think you've probably helped a lot of fans through depression and how you deal with it and trials and errors with your struggles in life and ups and downs. And I guarantee you've helped people through that journey.
Thanks. I hope so. I mean, if there's, you know, perspective in my own thing, once again, knowing all my complaints are enviable, and that idea that there's kind of a relativity to suffering, they're collecting surfboards right now. See, but anyway, it's all relative. It helps me to have people go, like, you guys, the only thing that sucks is your perspective. And it's like, oh, you're right. You've done that for me a lot. And hopefully, hopefully I get to reflect that to other people.
100%. Yeah, that Ireland trip we had really meant a lot, and that was a tough point in your life, and I felt like I got to be there with you, and I feel grateful.
At the bottom of my barrel.
We had so much Guinness. Oh, thank you, Guinness.
It was a good time.
Which, by the way, before we wrap up this little chapter and do a couple fan questions here, my favorite record that you've ever released, and this actually goes against Toad records too, is "Swallowed by the New." I think it's just, and maybe it's because I felt like I was part of that journey a little bit with the Ireland trip and that point in your life, but that album is just, I just love it so much. And if you're out there and you haven't purchased it and listened to it, I think it's your best work.
Thank you. I'm proud of that one. I would agree.
It sounds so good. Okay, we're gonna do a couple get some fan questions, and then we'll play one more song, and we'll call it a day.
Okay.
Thanks again for being here, man. It really is
sure.
good to have you, and thanks for helping me stay sane during all this. So maybe we'll try to answer these quickly because there's a handful of them. So, okay. Leif Arnson asks, "What's your opinion on the incredible Toad song, Pale Blue?" It hasn't been played since 1989. Do you think you'll ever work it back into the set list?
I don't know. I like that song. It's a good one. Yeah. I was writing about death. What is it? Pale blue, as death it comforts me. after storms and pouring rain, pale. I was morbid back then too.
Well, Leif wants to hear it again.
Okay. We'll try to add it back.
Jeff Mercer asks, who's your number one musical influence? We kind of covered that a little bit, but
I don't know if I have a number one musical influence. There's just many writers that I love. So, yeah, that's an impossible question.
Depends on the day of the week. That's my answer whenever people ask me those kind of questions.
It depends on the day of the week. Yeah, it depends on the moment. Absolutely and completely.
Gaz Moore asks, what were the last 3 albums you purchased or listened to? And will you ever come back to the UK and perform? Or ever come to the UK and perform, I guess.
I would love to come to the UK and perform. I need to have stuff, actually. I need to have some help promoting stuff there. I don't know how to get over there. So, yes, I would love to come to the UK. Last 3 albums, there was a band called Bernice that had an EP. It's like Puffy something. Anyway, new Bernice thing, which is fascinating harmonic and production stuff. I can't remember what else I've been listening to. What else is there that just came out? Oh, the new Fiample, which is really good. And, of course, the Watkins Family Hour, my sister. Yeah.
Perfect. James Bartholomew asks, what is your vision? This is going to be, I don't know how you can answer this quickly, but we'll try. What's your vision for the remainder of your career with Toad or solo? Do you think there will ever be a desire to retire?
There probably won't ever be an ability to retire. you know, to get off the road someday, but I'm not there yet. But then again, I probably won't be able to tour for the next 2 years. So there you go. Uh, so I don't know. I'd like the ability to get weirder, to feel more at home with just kind of doing, respecting all the various aspects of what interests me musically and kind of finding better voices for those. So I would just like to be more prolific. I would like to hopefully play more music with people instead of by myself. I miss people, the surprise of interaction. So, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, Jason Isbell tweeted a few weeks ago. He goes, "I will never play music in front of an audience without a drummer behind me again." I think it's because after being so solo on this online stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Amy LeBlanc asks, "I've seen Toad at New Orleans here at House of Blues. It's been some years since you returned to New Orleans. Will you come back?"
Yes.
Cool. That was an easy answer. Oh, our friend Drew Pierce asks, "How has this time of isolation, or has this time of isolation inspired any new songs?"
No. I've been really slow to write, and I mean, maybe one song. I just moved last week. I've been doing a ton of like relearning stuff I used to know for the last. Been working on the Toad record recording, so I haven't been writing, and I hadn't had a lot of time. There was a period of about a month and a half that I thought I was going to be alone a lot, and my daughter moved out from Brooklyn, which was great, but I had a lot less time alone than I thought I would have. And so I was kind of planning on this like solitary writing habit, and I can't write when other people are. So there you go.
Jody Hayden asks, which she might perhaps be the number one Toad fan. I'm not for sure if I've ever seen you in Northern California without Jody in the audience. She asks, "Glenn, do you have perfect pitch or maybe relative pitch? And does it come naturally to you after so many years of practice?"
I have relative pitch. Uh, you learn to hear and put things together, and you start. It's like learning anything. Like I think you just intuit it. Like I walk into rooms with friends of mine who build houses, and they have this way of like looking at walls and be, oh yeah, you could take that. That's not load bearing. Like they can see what's load bearing and what, and it just there's a thing where I would have to think of. I don't know what to look for in that. I don't know what to intuit, and you spend enough time building houses or tearing wall out, and you just start to see walls as semi-transparent, right? And in the same way with music, I think you just your vocabulary and your awareness gets big enough about things that it becomes a lot more intuitive. And whatever you're practicing, you're better at. Like when I was hanging out with Nickel, I could do harmony so much better. Oh my God, I've never been more in shape musically than simply trying not to drown around them. So, yeah.
I like that answer, more musically in shape. Adrian C. asks, "What advice would you give your younger self who was just starting this journey if you could go back in time and talk to young little Glenn?"
Oh, just more gratitude, more presence. Say yes more often. Don't think you're too cool for anything, and don't take for granted that any of it will last.
Ah, perfect. Jim McGaffey asks, "Do you ever dislike performing songs written about the tough times, or are you able to set the emotion aside and treat them just as any other song?"
Um, no, I think they're all useful. I mean, there are some songs that I mean, different song to song, but certainly generally, I really like, the song "Harder Times." I don't know. I don't mind going back into them. If it's where the grist for the mill is.
Jessica Beck, though, and a nice little follow-up to that one. Are there any songs you've written that make you cringe now?
Many. I play them often. Those are the requests that I pretend not to hear.
Um, Okay, we got two more questions, and we'll get this thing towards the end because I know your phone battery's going to die on us. Michael
We're
McLeod.
still not gonna do Corporal Brown.
Michael asks,
Misogynist piece of shit. Wish I'd never written it. Anyway, music's great. Todd wrote the music. Lyric, fuck it.
Michael asks, life on the bus. Can you give us one crazy story from the road?
We don't really have crazy. It's like we finish the show these days because my voice is more fragile than it used to be. Like, we don't hang out and sign stuff anymore because it destroys the throat. So we finish the show. I have some tea, like throat coat or something. And then I go back and I lay down in a bunk and I eat and I fall asleep. That's
why they're all still alive.
That's the bus. Yeah.
All right.
No, the weirdest thing that ever happened on the bus was somebody broke in, stole a bunch of stuff, and then tried to set it on fire. That was exciting.
And there's that.
And there's that.
Our buddy Matt Ward's got a little question for us. He says in the music video, "Everything But You." What were you caked in?
That was
that actual
chocolate
mud?
That was chocolate frosting.
And then I think he knew the answer to that, obviously.
It was ganache, yeah.
The follow-up question to that is, I don't know how quickly you can answer this, but what do you think the future
How did it take to wash off? Forever.
How long did it take for Matt to eat it off?
Hours. And what was the other question?
What do you think the future of live music looks like?
I think it's going to be I knew somebody who used to work at the Lady, which in San Francisco, and it was like a coin-op place. You would dance and strip in like a central theater, but then people would put in tips and like a window would pop. So I think music is going to kind of have that. Like, we'll be in little plexiglass areas sequestered from the audience.
I oddly had a friend that had a sister that worked there too, and every once in a while, my friend and her husband would go down to the Lusty Lady and find their sister's booth and just go twink twink and like, hey, it's us, just to surprise her with a lunch visit or whatever. That was great, man. Can you close us out with a song?
Sure.
Something in the Glen Phillips world if you want, but whatever you want to play.
What should I do?
Yeah, that sounds great. That one sounds good.
Okay. Love, your head is down, your eyes are on the floor. No matter what we get, leaves us wanting more. You know which way to go. For all the empty hours and restless afternoons, for all the faded flowers and dreams we spoke too soon. You know which way to go. But there's no harbor here, there's only danger near. Cliffs above and rocks below. And though I want you close, this light can only glow to warn you far from shore. And I love you. Now go. In the foghorn, lonely echoes cross the bay, and the beacon of the tower lights the way. So you know which way to go. know this much. You know which way to go. But there's no harbor here, there's only danger near. Cliffs above, rocks below. That one time, it's like an only shine to warn you far away from the shore, saying I love you. Now go. I love you. Now go. I'm still dreaming of your eyes, your mouth, your touch. But I won't have another echo upon my watch. You know which way to go.
Oh, I love that song so much. Thank you, Glen Phillips, so much for
Thank
being
you, Casey.
here.
Glad
thank you
my
guys.
phone worked.
Yeah, we had a couple little ups and downs there, but it worked out great, and I got to
Yep.
hear, we could hear everything, and thank you guys.
Now I got to
everyone.
go back and fix the rest of my internet.
Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thank you for the fan questions. Thanks for commenting below. If you comment any other questions for Glenn, I'll copy and paste them, and if they're a good one, I'll send it to him or something. The next Talk to Me show is this Thursday, March. I don't even know what month it is. May 11th.
Merch.
May 14th. This Thursday is May 14th, and my guest is G Love, G Love and Special Sauce, and I'm actually really excited because he got started around the same time you did, and I'm curious to hear some of those stories and trials and tribulations overlap with being a young.
I think we played
person.
with him in Hamburg. He was great. Still is.
He, and like you, he's one of the nicest people to hang out with. So I really like him, and I like you. Thank you so much, Glenn, for being here. It really means a lot to me that you took time out of your day to be part of this. It really does. So
Happy to do it. Talk to you soon, Casey.
Love you so much. Say hi to the family. See you soon.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care of one another.